Well, hello there, beautiful soul, and welcome back to Chat and Channel Session. In today's session, we're going to be going over something I get asked about periodically as a lifelong spiritual medium and an Akashic Records reader and energy healer, and something that may be a bit shocking if you've not heard it before, but it is true in my experience that no one actually passes before their time. We have these popular sayings of, oh, they passed so young, they passed before their time, only the good die young, etc. But in my experience, working with souls on both sides of life, it's not really true. It's something that we tell ourselves to try to make sense of a situation or to try to deal with it and deal with the emotions that it brings up within us and those of us who are left here behind on this side of life. So I want to deep dive on that today in case you have had the experience of grieving someone you love who passed away quote unquote too young, or in case you've been particularly affected by the passing of someone at a young age, even if they were not exactly in your life. These could be other friends and family members from before your time or just outside of your group, or they could even be people in the public eye that play a large role in terms of being an archetypal example for us or contributing to the public sphere or the arts in which we enjoy and really speak to our soul. So before we get started with all that today, let me welcome back those of you who are returning here at Chat and Channel Session. I really appreciate you. And to those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Danielle, #damsel at Enlightened Edits, your energy editor and energy healer of damseldesigns.com. That is DAMCLdesigns.com. As I said, I am a lifelong spiritual medium and psychic medium. I am also an Akashic Records reader and quantum Sikhem and shamanic energy healer, life and consciousness coach, metaphysical teacher, energy artist, writer, and so much more. And this is Chat and Channel Session, where my spirit guides, and in some cases some of you, present me with a topic and we do a stream of consciousness channeling on that subject to tap you into higher power. If you would like to participate in the chat portion of Chat and Channel, feel free to do so by leaving a comment, question, or review, or my favorite way for you to participate, which is by getting out a journal or the notes app on your phone or favorite device and doing some stream of consciousness writing along with me as you listen and as I channel. Those of you who do this often find that you're able to tap into your own spirit guide teams and get information specific to you and your soul based on the topic that we are channeling on today. If you would like to contact me and tap in even further with spiritual perspective and support, you can always reach me on my website, www.damseldesigns. Again, that's DAMCLdesigns.com, for quantum reading sessions where we work with your higher self, your quantum energy field, your spirit guides, as well as connect you with your loved ones in spirit. I also offer Akashic Records readings, and there are other type of spiritual sessions available, as well as digital downloads, energy art, and enlightened merch. On my website, you'll also find links to my social medias and an application form to contact me about going even further than session work and into quantum Sikhem or shamanic energy healing and or life and consciousness coaching. Remember, you can also follow me on Instagram at Enlightened Edits for spiritual content and inspirations on the daily, as well as the occasional live video. So now that you know where to find me, let's jump back into today's topic at hand. As I was saying, in my experience, I have been a lifelong spirit medium long before I started this as a career, but I have been working as a spirit medium as well as different types of spiritual work for well over a decade now. And in all of that experience with spirit and with clients all around the world, I have never really found a case where someone passed quote unquote before their time. I have a lot of experience crossing spirit over, even if a physical world living client does not come to me for that effect. Spirit has always come to me for that if they are in need. I always like to say, if you're a medium on both sides of life, again, in my experience. And I've always asked astral traveled with spirit and up to the Akashic Records library and helped spirit and souls out, as I said, on both sides of life. And in reading the Akashic Records of many types of souls, and in many of them coming to me in help crossing over or communicating with their loved ones, they've all expressed to me this common thread, whether they pass very young, and I have had the experience of dealing with babies that either pass away in terms of miscarriage, terminated pregnancies, or early on in life, all the way up, in age range to, God bless, people in their 90s. And I also work with people in terms of their past lives. And in all of these experiences, they've always said to me, yes, even though I passed young, I recognized that it was actually my time to go. My soul weighed that decision very carefully. And even though they may regret the decision to a degree, once they're looking back and looking over their loved ones that are still here on this side of life, because of maybe difficulties that they've left their loved ones with, etc., they never doubt that it was the right thing for them. Admittedly, sometimes they will admit to me and ask me to share with their loved ones that they do regret or resent how they passed to a degree or how they spent their allotted time while they were embodied. They all come to a point, in my experience, where they agree that they passed in a time and in a way that was very carefully calculated based on weighing the options for both their soul and their body, as well as what it would have looked like for them to go forward from that point if they had been able to. And they all come to this place where they understand why they passed at that time and why life this go around ended for them in that time period, even if it could be difficult for them to accept why it ended in that way or why they weren't able to continue in the way that they had originally hoped. And so we're going to be going over more of that, and also something that my guides and I like to call exit points and how that could fit in with your living life and understanding that better as well. But first, I want to go over more of what Spirit has shared with me from their perspective on the other side. They will continuously share with me that it was on some level, at the highest levels of existence, their choice, that they weighed their options. People who have sudden passings may express that they had a little bit of illness. They had either an accident or a little bit of illness, and their spirit teams gave them a glimpse of what life would be like if they continued in that life journey. And they may have seen something that they didn't like, that they didn't want to continue with. They may have seen that they would have gone into a vegetative state or into a quadriplegic state or into a state where they needed more care than they felt comfortable asking their loved ones or the people in their life to provide if they were lucky enough to have loved ones, or even just in a position that they did not want to continue in. Some souls have dealt with enough pain and checked enough off of their list in terms of lessons that they needed to learn. And I know that this can be hard to hear, especially if you've lost someone too young, in your opinion. I empathize with you about that, and I am so sorry for your loss, because it is your loss, right? It is our loss. It is the loss of those who are on this side. But Spirit always likes me to remind people that it is not Spirit's loss. It is a decision that is weighed very carefully on behalf of that soul. And in my experience and what I've been shown through the Akashic Record, every soul, to a degree, before they are born, plans out a roadmap for their life with their higher self and with as much of their complete soul as possible and with their higher power. Be it God, Goddess, Source, Universe, whatever you like to call it is fine. But with that higher power and their higher self perspective, they sort of make this agreement of lessons that they want to learn in that lifetime, talents that they maybe want to have or experience, or that they need to have or experience in order to fulfill the lessons that they want to learn, or the missions or goals that they want to accomplish. Now, on those lists and on those roadmaps, there are also things like soul contract agreements and karma balancing and karmic lessons, or healing of certain wounds or certain soul parts. There are things like sporadic soul retrieval if you believe in past lives, and I'm also a shamanic energy healer and practitioner who does soul retrieval to help people retrieve lost or compartmentalized or distant parts of their soul. But sometimes we do this through the roadmap that we plan by having lifetimes or trips or vacations or experiences in certain areas of the world that were resonant to our soul, perhaps in another trip around the sun, and we go back there, or we experience that kind of culture again in order to integrate that part back into us. We also have soul contracts with people like soulmates, which can be either romantic or platonic, and with karmic partners who we have an arrangement to balance karma with. If you believe in divine love, that even goes beyond a soulmate agreement in my experience. Some people call it twin flames. And we make a roadmap to experience all these different types of people, places, lessons, healings, and things. And we may or may not accomplish that complete list, but the roadmap is in place nonetheless. Now, some people see glimpses of that roadmap in doing things like numerology or astrology, and astrology I always like to refer to as a map as well. It is a guide of your personality within this individual lifetime. Sometimes you can see aspects of others in a natal chart as well, depending on your belief, but it is not a hard and fast rule in my opinion or experience. It is meant to be a guide, just like you can get a map or you can use a GPS and you can follow the directions and end up where you want to go, or you can take a few sporadic turns that you make of your own choosing and still end up where you need to go, but maybe do so in a bit more of a scenic way. So this is where I see free will coming into play. And of course, we do have the choice whether we're going to check those things off of our list using the roadmap or not. But all in all, we generally like to do that. And another thing that we usually place on the roadmap are what my spirit guides and I have always called and referred to as exit points. Now, exit points, everyone in my experience has multiple exit points. These would be parts along our timelines, along our life journeys and maps, where we place this little detour there that will allow us to have a check-in with our higher self and with source and see whether we want to continue in that lifetime. Sort of a, how's everything going? Is it going how you thought it would? Because often when we make these plans in the higher realms and then we get here into the density of physical reality, we severely have underestimated how it will feel to check those things off of our list and learn those lessons or do those healings or work with those souls again. And so we have this check-in of an exit point to say, how's it going? Do you want to continue in that lifetime, or do you want to go home now and see about perhaps being on the other side or recycling or ascending into another existence, depending on your beliefs? And during these detour exit points, they mostly go pretty unnoticed in people's lives as we pass them. Should we get to that exit point and say, yeah, you know, things are a little rough, but I want to continue. I want to see where this life is going. I want to keep going on and living. And as long as we make that decision to keep living, the exit point may look like a near-miss accident, or perhaps an accident that we recover from, or very commonly also an illness, or the threat or fear of an illness, or the possible diagnosis of an illness that then our doctors maybe see is better than they thought or anticipated. And going through these accidents, these injuries, or these illnesses, or sometimes in rare cases attacks, we have these near-death moments, whether we classify them that way or not, in which it's a very fast check-in of an exit point. And most of the time, people do pass them very quickly. They could be that accident that, yeah, maybe was significant in our lives, but we didn't really fear for our lives, but things were a little tumultuous maybe before and during and a little bit after. That's because our soul generally feels when an exit point is upcoming and things start to feel different. Some people go through a dark night of the soul or a depression or a need and a cue to change a lot in their life. They may feel really disconnected to the people and places and things that they've had going in their life. They may make a total life change after an exit point because of this check-in that happens on a spiritual level. And when we're doing that, like I said, it can happen very fast. This is where you hear the phenomenon of people getting into an accident or almost getting into an accident and seeing their whole life flash before their eyes. That's because they're remembering part of the life review and check-in process that happens at a possible exit point. Not everyone remembers that. It's a little bit like dreaming. Some people remember every dream that they have and some people don't. It depends how connected and in tune you are and whether you choose that it would be a good thing for you to remember or not. And so once we have that little check-in, like I said, if we say, yeah, I want to keep living, then things can get back on course or take us in the direction of a new course that would better help us to continue checking things off our list, having the experiences we want to have, etc. But if a soul gets to that point, that exit point, and determines that, you know what, life has been pretty hard, or I feel like I've accomplished as much as I'm going to in this life, I don't really have the energy or the desire to keep going, then that is an exit point that they would utilize to actually pass away. And this would be when things happen very quickly, like an accident or a sickness taking a quick turn or an unexpected turn. Even if someone appeared to have been getting better, they could have reached this exit point in their soul on the higher level, weighed the options and made the decision of saying, yeah, you know what? I'm out. I would prefer to leave. I think it would be better for my soul, easier on my soul, better for my overall soul goals and missions, etc. if I just exited now. It might be easier for the family or it might be easier for the soul. Either way, those are decisions that the soul makes on a higher level, which can be very difficult for us who are left behind to deal with and understand, well, why would they choose to leave? And to this, I always remind people, it is not, and very rarely ever, that they choose to leave us, their loved ones who are here on earth. It is more so that they are given an immediate higher perspective of the situation, how it would play out for them and for us. And with that in mind, they weigh the options of when it would be a better time for them to leave, and which would leave less hurt and less pain for the combination of them and us. And even though we could be severely hurting and grieving at their loss, and this is not to denote anyone's pain or anyone's grief in losing someone early in life or earlier than you expected. From that higher perspective, which we can barely understand in most cases, they have determined with higher powers' infinite wisdom that it would be less overall pain in the long run. And or it could be part of a decision that their soul needs to make for their individual soul's needs or overall mission that could be set for beyond this one lifetime. They could be determining that they've experienced enough pain, and even if it would hurt us, which of course most of them do regret, they need to be able to stop that momentum of the hurt that they've been experiencing in order to heal and then continue to learn and grow and change as a soul. And the ways for that will hardly ever make sense to us until we're fully on the other side to see and hear and understand it for ourselves from that higher perspective. Because even though I and people like myself do our best to explain that higher perspective and information and act as a medium in translating that information to you, it's something that is very difficult to grasp until our soul is in that higher place as well. Because here, when we're through this veil of separation and still in physical existence, we're still hurting, we're still missing them. Even if you are a medium like myself, or you have a really strong spiritual connection with your loved ones in spirit, or you utilize tools that I like to give my clients in terms of continuing to connect with and communicate with your loved ones, it's still not the same. It will never be the same as physically holding them whenever you want or being held by them. It will never be the same as being able to physically look in their eyes. And even though I may be able to take you on a shamanic journey trip and you may be able to experience that, or they may come and take you on a dream trip and you may see them and feel them, that is momentary for us, how it is in physical reality, and it's never going to be the same as the thing that we knew to be the real and physical thing. And so this is what we grieve and mourn for. And this is why it's difficult for us to understand that on any level, no matter how high up in existence, a soul would make that choice to leave early. And this is also why they don't have me explain all those reasons, because some of them would not help you as the person grieving or us as the people grieving to actually understand. They may just feel like an insult from our perspective here, because we may tell ourselves or want to tell them, but I don't care if I would have had to take care of you. I would have done it. I love you. I would rather have you here. But this is where it's a balanced decision. And this is why higher power and infinite intelligence get involved in this decision as well from that perspective, because we may think and tell ourselves and tell them that we would be capable of taking care of them or helping them more, etc. But from that perspective that they were able to see and reach before they made that decision on the higher levels to pass, they were able to see with infinite intelligence that it may have bred more resentment. It might have bred illness or sickness or financial hardship more for us here that they did not want to be a part of. They didn't want to build karma like that. They didn't want to build resentment like that. They didn't want to build sickness or inconvenience for their loved ones here to more of a degree than they may have already. And while it's an admirable thing to want to end or take care of your loved ones until they pass, which is something that I have done, it is not something that everyone is capable of doing depending on their life and their health. And it is also not something that everyone is capable of or meant to do for an extended period of time, which is why it's weighed quite carefully with bearing in mind to everyone who has the potential to be involved in that situation, but ultimately to that soul and that soul's ideals. Now, in other circumstances, we also have the case where a soul is more of a fast learner than some of us and really only has on their list to experience a few things, or only has the desire to experience a few things in life, or has a very specific mission to create certain pieces of art or music or certain aspects of change in the world, and then knows once they do that thing, it's going to be time for them to go. And so this is where we have the phenomena of only the good die young, right? In many cases, people that we see as good die young because sometimes they are too gentle for this world. They visit us or incarnate from some of the higher dimensions of existence, and getting to this earth level density is not really fun, and it can be tumultuous, and it can be heartbreaking to someone who's only looked at it from a higher perspective but not experienced it. So this is where we have the aspect of really gentle or sensitive souls, and they seem to get overloaded, maybe battle chronic illnesses or mental health issues, etc., while they're also working on mission and or creating or influencing the world. And they seem so gentle and sweet and loving and overwhelmed, and then they eventually pass young, not to make light of it. And we get this idea, only the good die young, because they were really not built to experience life for longer stretches, or they didn't have the need to. Like we were just saying, they could be really fast learners that had just a short number of things on their list that they wanted or needed to experience in that lifetime, and then it was time for them to go. So these could be people, for example, who are in the public space. I am very careful about talking about quote unquote famous figures, because I still believe in respecting their families if they still have physically living families. And so I don't like to be that reader to channel famous people publicly, at least not until this point in my career. But just to give gentle examples, Martin Luther King, for example, passed very young, and he had an anticipation that his passing was coming. People like Abraham Lincoln as well also had an anticipation that his passing was coming, and he passed quite young. Now, these are people that became not only famous, but anyone who's famous, in my opinion, also lends themselves to being somewhat of an archetype example for others and for history. And they made immense changes in their short lifetimes, and they planted seeds of influence. And after that, there may have been other things that they wanted to do to be here for their families, etc. And I'm sure that they did. I don't want to physically bring them through and use them as direct examples, because I don't feel like that's respectful at this time. But they also knew from a higher perspective that they had accomplished the majority of their mission, and it was maybe time, based on how the world was reacting, to pass the baton or pass the torch on, even if that was just in terms of influence or inspiration, and see where that mission was to take people next. Now, again, this is because they weighed the options with how people were reacting. Now, I understand both of these men were assassinated, and that doesn't appear as if it's their choice. That is a reactionary choice of the world to their mission and their seeds of positive change and influence. And then their soul sees how the world is reacting to that mission that they came in with, and then makes the decision, okay, you know what? It's not my preferred way to go out, maybe, and it's not going to be the best for family members, etc., to deal with, but it will leave an impact. And at that point in leaving an impact, I have accomplished, let's say, 90% of what I had planned to accomplish for my soul. So I will agree to that on a higher soul level and see what the world does with the energy that I left it with, and with that impact, not only of my lessons and my mission that I left the world with, but also with the impact of the way that I passed and the lessons that the world can continue to learn from that, based on how they reacted to me and played a part in my death. So that's how I have seen it with people that are killed, and their passing leaves an impact and an influence, or becomes a news story in the public space. That is a decision of that soul, where it is not only their life and the way that they've lived it and the mission, etc., that they lived so far, but it is also their death that can continue to teach the world, and even perhaps check off things on the list for that soul, because they can see how not only their life but their death will continue to be a teaching tool for others as well as for themselves. And that is a great sacrifice that some souls choose to make, or some souls choose to learn in that way, to be part of a mutual growth experience for both their soul and the collective world at large. I have also experienced souls who are from some of the higher realms, like we were talking about, even some souls that resonate on the angelic frequency spectrum, in my opinion and experience. And they also tend to have shorter lives, depending. I mean, there's some angelic stories that they live on the earth for hundreds of years and they have quite a hermetic existence, etc. But souls that choose to be more public and come into incarnation from the angelic realms or from the starseed accredited realms or higher dimensions, however you resonate and call it, they can burn out more quickly, like a star that falls to Earth, right? It burns out in our atmosphere. And this again is because they have different sensitivities in their nature. And they may also have just a very specific set of things that they want or need to experience in terms of personal lessons for themselves or in terms of mission and influence in which they want to leave on the world. Most lives are a balance of the two. But for these souls that incarnate from the higher dimensions, they can and do tend to burn out more quickly. But if you look at the life of any soul who leaves this planet early or leaves that incarnation early in terms of passing away, you will probably also see that they did accomplish more in their short years than most people do in a lifetime. And that is because time, in my opinion and experience, is an illusion and is a construct and something that we created or were given this structure of time in order to understand and better move through this density of reality. And in a way to count out our experiences. Now, for most people, that does work quite well, but for creative people, time can be a funny relationship, right? And so this is also where we get the idea of a lot of creative people tending to sometimes struggle more in this density of life or to pass away early in life, because creativity cannot be held within constructs such as time. And so if you look at the span of the life of really anyone who passes away young, whether they be a creative, whether they be famous, whether they be an angelic or higher frequency incarnation or not, more often than not, it will be obvious once you look that they really lived in their years. They really accomplished a lot. Now, that doesn't have to be big in life and world-changing things like Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King. That can be they changed their family. They really taught their family lessons. It could be the life of a young child who has an illness early, which is something obviously I wish on no one. But again, we have experiences and we get certain illnesses, etc., in my opinion and experience, based on higher perspective reasons, right? And some of those reasons we can get to know and understand through me helping you see the Akashic record or the Akashic map or the quantum entanglement of things. But a lot of them will not make sense or be easily accepted to us until we have that fuller, higher perspective, right? Because it shouldn't ever really make sense for someone to hurt or to be hurt or to be ill or to suffer or to struggle. But these are choices that each individual soul either makes or consents to that experience on some level. And we've had chat and channel sessions about unconscious consent, where that consent is sort of hijacked by a trauma within us or by influence from an outside source. So I encourage you to go check out those previous chat and channel sessions on that as well. And in a lot of chat and channel sessions, we explore things like limiting beliefs and all of that. But specifically, there is a session entitled Understanding Consent and Your Responsibilities in Life and Manifestation that may help you. But in general, and in the most basic of terms, we navigate to allow, attract, or decide a great number of the things that we experience in life based on what is available to us and how it would best fit in with the experiences that we need or want to have, or the lessons that we are meant to learn. Now, those things are malleable. It may not take an illness or a bout of suffering for everyone, but those things will be dependent on whatever is easiest, fastest, or most available within terms of your belief systems as well, to fit in and get you to where you need and choose and want to go from that higher perspective. So if we were meant to learn a lesson, let's say, of being taken care of by another soul, which may be a soul contract to balance karma between us, or maybe a learning lesson for us to be taken care of and for the other person to know how to take care of someone else, then yes, we may experience experience or be born with an illness. And that is a lesson and a teaching for us and the people in our lives. Now, that may happen at the beginning of life or at different points in life, but these are things that tend to happen as facilitators for those larger karmic checks and balances or lessons or healings in which we are meant to learn. And so this is how we do choose them. We may not choose the specifics consciously of every part of our experience, but we may choose, let's say, to hold on to a great deal of emotion, knowing that it's not good for us, and that may eventually turn into an illness when we don't choose to deal with those emotions in another way. So there are all kinds of reasons, and they will be so unique and specific to you and your loved one's circumstances. But there are all kinds of reasons why someone can be born with or experience a hardship or an illness in life. And most people seem to understand and accept on some level that everything happens for a reason. For people that are older, that have seemed to have a chance to live or to have some kind of a life or make some kind of a life for themselves in terms of our terms. But when it happens to young people, children, or really any age that we consider young, depending on our circumstances, it seems to make less sense. But like I was saying, if you examine those lives, they could have been such a light in their family. They could have really taught their family how to love in a different way, or how to slow down, or how to prioritize happiness or health, or, different ways of living that weren't all about the grind. There are children that are born and maybe don't live for an extended period of time, but their family will talk about them forever and feel them around and talk about the lessons that child taught them by being such a light, by maybe being happy through their illness, or by being unafraid, or by trusting them, or whatever it is. Now, it doesn't seem fair and it doesn't seem right, but this is where our ideas of fair and right come into play, rather than that higher perspective and also what that soul needs and chooses. Maybe they really only wanted and needed to experience Earth life for a few years, and they really wanted to do so just to have the bond of family and to feel what that is like, and to have someone to love and to love them. And maybe they did not want to experience adulthood, which I think a lot of us can understand and relate to, but maybe they didn't want or need to experience other facets of life, and they really just wanted a childhood from a soul perspective. And that is a gift that their parents were able to give them, and in turn they gave their parents a gift of, loving them to the best of their ability, and making sure their parents knew that even though they were sick, they didn't blame them for it, or even though there was an accident or something, they will always be their baby, and that they will always be loved and loving their family, even from the other side. And that is something that I share, not to ever make light of the hardship and the suffering nature of losing a child of any age, by the way, but I share it because this is what Spirit has shared with me. And if it could bring comfort to just one person who has lived through or helped someone they loved through a scenario like this, that is important to me. That is important to Spirit. So no matter how young someone passes away, I encourage you to look at their life, because I have yet to see a circumstance in which they didn't either cram a lot of lessons into that life, good or bad, right? Lessons can be, in our perception, good or bad, but life, in my opinion, is about experience and learning and or teaching. And yeah, hopefully we have a lot of love and fun and good experiences in there too, but not every lifetime is going to be that for everybody. So if you look at the life of someone who passed away young, I encourage you to use your discernment in terms of balance and looking at how much that life, no matter how short, had impact for them and or for you. And even if it seems like they got cut short of the things that they wanted to do, trust that if and when they are ready, that soul will be given other opportunities and additional opportunities in terms of working through spirit side or in having other lives if you experience that and believe in that. But in my experience, and that's all I can speak to, my experience and the many thousands of souls that I have helped, no life ends too soon. We may want it to have gone on for longer, but ultimately our higher soul knows that we may not have known what to do with that longer time, or we may have burnt out the body and not have had the facilities to be able to do more in that body-soul lifetime. And so we will be given another opportunity with those talents or with that knowledge or with those loved ones in other lives if and when we need and want and choose to. But until then, those souls get to love on us that are still here and get to heal on the other side and get to send any healing or knowledge that they can to us on this side until such point as we can join them and understand, why they passed the way they did or at the time that they did, and why, along with infinite intelligence, they may have chosen or needed to use that particular exit point of the many that they had available to them. Just like we all, in my experience, have many exit points available to us, and they only become truly relevant when they are used to bypass that exit point, continue living, and perhaps use that opportunity or that near-death experience to move in another direction, or when we utilize one of them to actually exit and pass away. I know that may have been difficult for some of you to hear, like I said, especially if you are still grieving, which most of us grieve to a degree for our entire lives. But also remember that in my experience, we all have a higher self, and that higher self stays connected to the heavenly realms. This is why we do things like meditation and energy clearings and chakra work, etc., to connect with our higher self, or meditate and mindfulness also do that. Because when we kind of clear out that channel between our ego and personality and hurt and earth self and that higher part of our soul that can't really fit in our entire earthly bodies or earthly experience, but that we can communicate with through the heart and higher mind, we are able to reach and tap into our connection with source or higher power, as well as spirit and different dimensions if you resonate with that. But that higher self, which is always connected to the heavenly realms, is also still connected to the realms in which our loved ones in spirit are connected. So this is where you also have the phenomena of people coming back from near-death experiences and not only talking about other loved ones that they have that were passed away, but also saying, "Oh, I saw you there, even though you're alive." That's because they saw the higher self of the living person there. Because part of us is always, in my opinion and experience, in those higher realms. And many of us visit there again when we do things like sleep or meditate. And so we are always still connected to the loved ones that we are supposed to be connected with. Sometimes connections end or we outgrow them, etc. But for the most part, our loved ones are still connected with a part of us until we join them again and until we graduate these realities or even relationships. So this is the idea where they're not here, but they're sort of in the next room, right? And so we may not be able to see them the same or call them the same or hug them the same, but there is still connection. There are still connection possibilities. And while I am very honored that some of those experiences get to be through me or people like me who do it with integrity and for the right reasons, I hope, there are always ways for you to connect as well and to remember the parts of you that are still connected and to cultivate those more. But be gentle with yourself in that process, because grief acts as an extra veil between us and the spirit realm, between us and our loved ones in spirit, and even between us and our higher selves or intuition. So be gentle with yourself in the process of grieving and having and experiencing grief, and know that even if you're not feeling them, it is probably not because your loved ones aren't around. It is most likely just because you have a thicker level of grief veil around you than other people, and so it's making it a little bit more difficult for you to pick up on those experiences or communications or interactions. That can be helped, it can be worked with, but it all starts with your willingness, your decisions, and your healing, as well as your knowledge and understanding. So those are things that I can help with, and those are things that your own journey with prayer and meditation and experience of healing can help with as well. I do also want to mention one last thing about exit points. Although primarily in today's session, we have been focusing on those who pass early on in life or seemingly before their time, according to our definition of early and time, of course. Know that an exit point and seeming to pass suddenly can happen at any stage in life. I've seen it happen in people's 90s where they choose an exit point even though they had others after that available, but they choose that specific one for a specific reason. So any passing that you are mourning or that you have experienced that feels sudden can be the point where a relative or a loved one chose that sudden exit point for a reason, whatever that reason was of their own, even though they may have had others available after that, based on the decision that they made from what they were able to see and feel and tap into during that exit point life review like we discussed. So I hope and pray and trust that this session has been enlightening to you today. Feel free to save it, and hopefully you will not have much cause to use it in terms of having experience of those who pass away young. But if and whenever you do have that experience or know someone who has that experience, if and when you deem and use your discernment that it would be helpful for them to listen, I would be very honored if you would share this with them. Please remember that in sharing things like this with people who have lost loved ones, it may be triggering. So it may be best for you to save it for a time that you feel it's more appropriate, and always check in with the person before you just send them something. Try to have a gentle conversation with them on whether or not they are ready to listen to something like this. And if they're not, that's okay. Just let them know that you know where this material is if and when they ever decide that they are willing and ready to listen to it. So I am going to close our session here so you can marinate on all the information that we went over today. If this is interesting to you because you've been intrigued by those who pass away young, whether in the public eye, or if you have been someone who has experienced the grief of losing someone young, I encourage you to spend some time after listening and contemplate either in silent prayer or meditation, or like we said in the beginning, just get out something to write and do some stream of consciousness writing. See which points hit for and resonate with you to help you better understand the circumstance that you may be thinking about right now, or the person who passed or has the potential to pass that you may be thinking about, and see what guidance comes through directly for you in terms of that situation based on this knowledge and these experiences. If you would like to journey forward with more spiritual perspective and help and support, as I said, you can visit my website, www.damseldesigns.com, anytime for spiritual reading sessions. The one that we do that connects you with loved ones in spirit, as well as other type of higher spiritual information, is the quantum session. And then I also have Akashic Records reading sessions available as well, where we can tap into soul contracts, impacts your past lives, etc. And for those of you who want to enhance your understanding and expand your gifts, or work on woundings or limited beliefs, a combination of both in my experience is always helpful, you can level up with me through quantum Sikhem and shamanic energy healing and life and consciousness coaching packages with me. As I said, in those we can do things like soul retrieval, we can do inner child healing, we can do past life and timeline healing, as well as coach you in terms of your intuition and gifts. Those are really customized containers and packages that will be fit to your soul and your soul's needs at this time. So if you are interested in that, use the contact form and the application form that's available linked in the description and on my website to reach out to me, and we will set up a time to talk to see what a custom built package would look like for you. I have a limited number of slots that I do with clients of that per month, depending on what your soul needs and how much time you would like to invest in working together, because those yield and utilize higher forms of energy. So I like to limit those spots to give everyone the highest energy possible. If you are interested, please do reach out as soon as possible. And as I said, you may also want to dive into other chat and channel sessions that you will find here and on all the streaming platforms that you may be listening to this on, such as Amazon Music, Audible, Google, iHeartRadio, etc. The backlog of chat and channel sessions from before I started uploading across the streaming platforms are also available on my YouTube channel at D's Enlightened Edits through the chat and channel session playlist. And if you would like to support chat and channel session and get in on additional content, you can become a low-cost monthly paid subscriber on Spotify and listener on Spotify and check out those little locks and unlock that extra material. You can also support chat and channel session by contacting me about being a sponsor and or by leaving all amounts appreciated energy exchange and donations for sessions that have been particularly helpful to you. Those are not necessary, but they are really greatly appreciated to help me support the streaming platforms and the channel and get more of this work out there to the public freely. If you are interested in doing that, you can use the link that will always be in the description or visit www.paypal.me/DSEnlightenedEdits. So thank you so much to those of you who support in that way. Thank you to my clients, and appreciations to all of you who are or have been listeners here at Chat and Channel Session. I love being able to have this interaction with you and share this knowledge in ways that I know will empower you. So I appreciate and thank you again for being here today, beautiful soul. I'm going to close this session, and I hope that you will like this if you've liked it and join us again next time. Be blessed with love, light, and light codes. Love, Danielle. #damsel at D's Enlightened Edits of damseldesigns.com.